She's in jail because she failed to obey the law and issue same-sex marriage licenses. And now this story is going from the silly to the serious as it opens up a big picture issue. What would happen if government workers only decided to enforce the laws that they believe in? Then another day, another Donald Trump controversy. We're going to tell you about his latest feud and also his latest immigration comments that are making headlines, but not for the reasons you'd probably think. Then he's not even 2 years in, but people could already be lining up to get Mayor Bill de Blasio voted out. And those, I'm talking about Democrats now. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this Friday night. We're going to start with a controversy over same-sex marriage licenses in Kentucky and how this case could set, if not a dangerous, a troubling national precedent. Now, Rowan County, it is issuing the licenses today. That's the day after clerk Kim Davis was thrown in jail for contempt because she refused to issue them. Now, here is Davis in her office earlier this week arguing with people over those licenses. She's now in jail for contempt for defying a federal order. Davis claims same-sex marriage is against her religion, and she's getting support from, among other folks, Republican presidential candidates, at least some of them, including Rand Paul.
I think it's absurd to put someone in jail for exercising their religious liberty.
And he is not alone. Bobby Jindal, Scott Walker, Mike Huckabee, Ted Cruz, among the other supporters who really came out almost immediately in defense of this clerk's actions. Now, bear in mind, Jindal and Walker, they're sitting governors. So what would happen if lawmakers only enforced the Supreme Court decisions and laws they actually liked? Well, Shelley Mayer, she's a Democratic Assemblywoman representing the great city of Yonkers, and to her left is Dominic Carter, political journalist, author, and professional troublemaker. Scott Vanderhoff, he's an attorney and former Rockland County executive, and Andrew Whitman, our senior political correspondent. All right, you know, in the beginning I saw this story, I'm like, oh, that's a Kentucky story, you know, interesting. Then the presidential candidates weighed in. Then I'm hearing other arguments, Shelley, that, hey, well, you know what, her faith says otherwise. I want to give credit. I think it was Andrew who said, well, what if all of a sudden, you know, a Muslim woman said that it was against her faith to issue gun permits? And we can go up and down with all the other hypotheticals here. The strict constructionists who believe in the Constitution as it's literally written, they're going to like certain things and they're not going to like certain others. It's dangerous, especially when you got sitting governors. Not some woman in Kentucky who might really actually believe in what she's saying, to start saying that people should or shouldn't have to adhere to the law of the land. Am I making more of this than it is?
You're absolutely right. In the first place, it's a settled issue of law.
Right.
You're a public employee. You are obligated to act in accordance with the law. Your personal views are honestly not relevant to your duties. Once the Supreme Court decided, she took an oath to uphold the law, and as did the governors. That's all political posturing, and it's really unacceptable. We have a country of laws. It's one of the wonderful things about it. A court has decided this is her obligation. She's unable to carry it out. She should resign. That's the end of that conversation.
And how many times, Andrew, have we talked in the show, and I understand this part is legal, but states' rights is great, but it depends on the zip code where you live, how you're going to be treated in many cases in the court of law. Forget that you got Washington and Colorado let you smoke pot legally, kind of, sort of, and other states you can't. But depending on how you're prosecuted, depending on your access to certain rights, whether it's debates over abortion, debates over gun control in this country, literally, where you step over a line will decide where your rights are. So, but this is the Supreme Court of America saying these two guys or these two women are allowed to get married now. And this woman, and I'm not even getting on her, because she believes what she says, but people who should know better, and the dangers implicit in her saying, you know what, she doesn't like the Supreme Court decision, she should stay in her job, and she shouldn't have to issue the license.
Yeah, there are some issues where it depends on what state you're in or even what community within a state that you're in. This isn't one of them, because this is this is the Supreme Court ruling. And the dangerous part for this is that she's the access point to government for people in her county. So if people want to file for marriage, they have to go through her. Otherwise, the government doesn't recognize the marriage. So what she's doing is blocking their due process under the law, and that's a problem. The process is playing out the way it's supposed to. She's being held in contempt, and the process is moving forward. But, I mean, there is a slippery slope in all of this. What if, I mean, if she didn't want to issue gun licenses because violence is against her
She's a
religion,
Quaker, let's
I'm
say,
sure
yeah.
most of the people who are supporting her right now would be railing about how bad she is. Or if she was Muslim, in the example that you gave, people would be saying this is Sharia law that's creeping into the United States. We don't make these decisions based on our religious beliefs.
And Scott, just from a practical or procedural standpoint, as a guy who ran a county, if a clerk doesn't want to issue a license, a lot of people said, why didn't she just get fired? Explain why a judge put her in contempt rather than, just give her a pink slip.
Well, let me emphasize something you both mentioned. This is not about the Supreme Court. This is a contempt of a federal court to do something. She's in jail not because of her beliefs. She's in jail because she refused to take a direct order from a federal court. And I don't care what your opinion is, that you got to do or you go to jail. That's the answer to that. Then you deal with the issue, of course, coming back. And Shelley's absolutely correct. Anybody who raises their hand and puts their hand on the Bible and says, I will uphold the laws of the United States Constitution, et cetera, you have to do it. The question I have, and it's not a personal issue.
Right.
This is not a personal religious issue. Good, I'm so proud of her for having a religious feeling about things, but she cannot serve in that function. She should go to her deputy, say, I am unable to do this. I am bound by the law to do it, and have the deputy do it, which, by the way, is now occurring now that she's in jail. But one has to remember, this is not a question of the U.S. Supreme Court decision. This is a federal order that she is in contempt of, which is why she's in jail.
And answer, if you could, Scott, the question I hear from a lot of folks, hey, why didn't she just get fired? Why is she sitting in a jail cell?
First of all, I don't know if she's appointed or elected. I assume she's elected, just like we are here in Rockland. So she can't get fired by the people. She can be held in contempt for not doing her proper actions. What she should do, if she were really believing in what she's saying, is I cannot follow the laws that I'm upheld and I'm holding and required to do, therefore I resign, or I take a leave of absence, or I do something. Now that would have made the same point, okay, about the issue of same-sex marriage without having to go through this process, because, and the slippery slope all of you talked about is the issue. Once you decide not to follow a federal court's order, then we have lost law and order in America. I don't care what you do.
And the recklessness of people who are seeking to have the highest office of the land to say that she shouldn't be punished because she's not going to follow and uphold the law she was sworn to do and accepted that responsibility, I find really reckless. I know nobody's going to remember this. This is September, the year before a general election, what Scott Walker had to say, or Jindal, or you name it. But that is completely irresponsible.
Will remember.
Well,
People
and Rand Paul is just ignorant, because this is not a religious belief issue. It is a federal court order.
Richard, it's pandering politicians in an election year. It's as simple as that.
Well,
they don't
have,
care.
But Dominic, we saw this before.
They don't have one the governor had.
Okay.
They have one the presidential
Remember when we
had.
saw this before, though, on a different level? Remember when we tried to integrate a school, particular school down south here, and literally the National Guard had to basically tell the governor to step out of the way? So you can't have this idea that every state, every county, every city gets to make up their own rules and not observe laws.
They know that, Richard. They're pandering.
Yes,
They're
I
pandering
told
for
you,
votes.
just
It's
about
as simple as
politics.
that.
But it has to be called out. It has to be
It
called
does have
out.
to be called out.
Because it legitimizes this sort of view that everyone has the right to do whatever they want when they're an appointed or elected.
ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
And
It's not
Kim
our
Davis,
system.
the clerk we're talking about, it's real simple. She wants to be a martyr. She wants to be a martyr to the right. Look at me. I stood up to Obama and those crazy federal laws, and they're making us accept gay marriage, and I'm not going to do it.
Look, I think there's hypocrisy. The woman, again, I don't want to she's been divorced 4 times.
Right.
She's talking
I
about
didn't
the
bring up her
sanctity
personal
of
life.
marriage.
I
and she
didn't
won't
bring
allow
up her
2 other
personal
people.
life.
But you know what? Let's say she firmly believed it. Let's even take
doesn't
politics
matter
out
what
of
she
it. I
believes.
agree with you, and that's the mistake people make. You can hold a religious view.
Absolutely.
And God bless you if you have the conviction to stand by it, okay? It's America. You should be able to believe in whatever God you want, and you should be able to, no one's making you hold that job. But you don't get to keep the job and decide who does and doesn't and throw out federal law. And when I heard today, flicking around the radio, talking heads saying, you go get him. She's right here, and this is just government gone amok. We have to have rule of law. And I just get nervous when somebody on the other end of that dial is listening to that and saying, you know what, they're right. We shouldn't listen to laws we
Well,
don't
the
like.
most unfortunate part about it is that you got people who want to run our country.
Right.
And they are wrong on this. They're 100% wrong. And it has nothing to do with same-sex marriage. It has nothing to do with it. It has to do with upholding the rights guaranteed under the Constitution by the Supreme Court and ultimately a federal court who said you must do this. It's the law of the land. If you want to challenge the laws, I mean, we've had a lot of bad constitutional Supreme Court decisions. Plessy versus Ferguson and on and on and on, whether you go through the process. But as long as you're a person who is representing the public in that particular capacity or any, you've got an absolute responsibility to uphold the law or step aside.
This is where the naive Schoolhouse Rock's West Wing fan in me runs into a wall, because I keep wondering where's the adult in the room on the Republican presidential field who stands up and says, you know what, I support her belief, but you can't do that, and you can't operate as a county clerk based on.
I think Trump did that.
Trump.
Okay,
Yeah,
we are so through the looking glass.
Oh
if
no!
Trump's
And
the
you know
one who
what?
came-
No, he's right. He's
He
right.
said he
And
came
that
to
is the biggest indictment, Scott, of your grand old party right now, that Donald Trump has become the voice of reason. We're going to talk about what he had to say in terms of refugees even. I can't believe what I'm saying. But I would just say this for a second. For anybody out there who thinks this is left-right, if the Supreme Court decided tomorrow that Roe v. Wade is no longer the law of the land and abortions were legal, if doctors decided they were going to still go ahead and do the procedure outside of the law and they should be arrested too. You don't get to make up your own laws and your own guidelines from the federal courts. You cannot go outside of it, because then we are no longer a country of laws. And I know people are panning for votes here, but it just, okay. Speaking of Donald Trump, he called the GOP's bluff about a third-party run when he signed the Unity Pledge. Now he's at it again after surprising people by talking about tax hikes for the wealthiest 1% in certain cases. Now he's talking about welcoming immigrants from the Middle East. What is going on here?